top-down policy approach is a method to policy design and a way to structure policy implementation in which the goals of the policy are made by the top, then implemented through the bottom or the lowest level implementers. In this video, we are from Group 2, consists of me, Dyah Ayu N, Diva Nandya, Hervina Adhanita, as well as Dwika Rahman, would like to discuss China's one-child policy as the example of top-down policy. Emerged as the response of booming population almost thrice from the original population, one-child policy existed as the response of such cause. Within 20 years, the population rose from 700 million residents to approximately 1.4 billion in 1980. This policy began to perform everyone by giving announcement that citizens allowed to have one child only. However, in 2015, China ended its one-child policy because of its long-term effect.
Moving on to the video that we have chosen. It mainly talks about a girl named Nanfu who grew up under China's one-child policy. After Nanfu was born as a girl, her parents suddenly wants to have a son. Thus, her parents managed to have another child by fulfilling certain requirements and permissions. During Nanfu's life, she was feel ashamed and guilt for having a brother, simply because she was surrounded by children that comes from one-child families. She felt like her family was wrong for having more than one child. So basically, the Chinese government enforced their people to have one child only for the sake of the country. It clearly can be seen through the policy itself, which delivered from the top that represents the governments to the bottom that represents the people. What the Chinese government did was firstly, not taking into account people's point of view, whether they are agreed or disagreed about one-child policy. Other than that, this policy also has a clear objective, which is to cut the populations in China. However, from the video that we have been analyzed, Nanfu told her personal story about when her mom asked by the official of the governments to sterilize herself right after Nanfu was born. But long story short, because her family still want a son, then the family has to pay a substantial finance to have a second child. This policy is considered as an authoritative policy.
So next up, why does the Chinese government use this policy? China has been a socialist republic country that is run by a single party called the Chinese Communist Party. Thus, the government has played a predominant role, which tends to be an authoritarian government. In the end of the 70s, the Chinese government took a step in response to China's rapid growing population, massive famine, and to improve the economy of China as the government realms. Therefore, a top-down policy approach is the most suitable for China during their hard time. How the policy was implemented. In September 1980, the Central Committee of the Chinese Communist Party published a public letter which encompassed the obligation for Chinese people to adhere to the one-child policy. The Chinese government made sure that their citizens obeyed fully by conducting so-called neighbor watch surveillance by spying on their neighbors and communities that report any suspicious activity. Posters and pictures regarding one-child policy were everywhere, including in books, matches, and playing cards. After giving birth, mothers asked to be sterilized or abort her fetus if she gets pregnant for the second time. However, the mother can keep her child with certain consequences. One of Nanfu's interviewees was a midwife who had performed 60,000 forced abortions and sterilizations. She also killed a late-term fetus who can survive an abortion. She said she was full of guilt.
And lastly, the result of this policy. What was the outcome? In its practices and results, the Chinese government had successfully implemented the one-child policy. However, in a long-term run, it kind of backfired to them. Generally, sons were preferred over daughters, so there was a rise in the number of abortion of female fetuses. Numerous of female babies were killed, abandoned, or placed into orphanages as the result of this policy. The outcome for the bottom level is also quite traumatizing. Bottom level implementers are the ones who are in duty to do such things, and this is the core explanation and example of the rigid top-down approach, where people in lower level must obey to the instructions from higher level always. But in 2013, China changed the one-child policy into two-children policy because of the imbalance of democracy, but again, it is too late. Approximately only 1,800,000 couples managed to have 2 children, resulting in low population in the productive age groups as well as gender imbalance. With that being said, we have come to the end of our analysis. We sincerely hope that our analysis can help the watchers understand better more about the policy, approach, as well as adding new insight to your knowledge. Group 3 checking out. Until next time!